to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast, the most listened to daily Miami Dolphins podcast on the internet.
Miami's got the Dolphins, the greatest of all.
Come on, Dolphins fans. Time to fins up.
We're in the air, we're on the ground, we're always in control. And when you say Miami, you're talking Super Bowl. Cause we're the Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one. Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one.
Good evening, Miami Dolphins fans. How are you today? And thank you for listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast on this Monday, January the 20th. I am your host, Michael Leva, flying solo today, as we got a few things here to talk about in the world of the Miami Dolphins. We're going to talk about Anthony Weaver and the possibility of him leaving Miami to get a head coaching job, as it's looking, I don't want to say likely, but I think it's a very strong possibility that this might happen. We're going to talk about what we saw from this past weekend's games and how that ties into the Miami Dolphins and their roster construction moving forward, and maybe a few other things along the way as well. But before we get to that, a quick word from our sponsor.
The DolphinsTalk.com podcast network is sponsored by Caneswear. Caneswear is the place to go for officially licensed apparel for the Miami Dolphins, Miami Heat, the Hurricanes, Florida Panthers, and all of the professional and college teams in South Florida. Looking for the latest jersey, a birthday gift, or the newest hat to hit the market of your favorite South Florida team? Check out Caneswear for their overwhelming selection of sports apparel. Located at 2655 South University Drive, Davie, Florida, Caneswear has it all. Not in South Florida? No worries. Visit Caneswear.com to shop their inventory from the comfort of your home, and they'll ship it to you. International fans, too. Caneswear.com is the spot that Miami fans shop. That's Caneswear.com, Caneswear.com.
All right, let's get right into the news. I think the big news that broke on Monday, early in the morning, Tom Pelissero of the NFL Network, that Miami Dolphins defensive coordinator Anthony Weaver has a second interview with the Saints this Wednesday to be their head coach. And you know, anytime you get a second interview, that's a sign that you're on the short list. You might get this job. And with the news also on Monday that the Bears hired Ben Johnson, the Lions offensive coordinator, as their head coach, and the news coming out of New York City that Lions defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn, who's also up for that Saints job, is meeting with the Jets on Tuesday. And if he doesn't accept the job on Tuesday, or if he's not offered the job, or if he doesn't accept it, then he's going to meet with the Saints, I think also on Wednesday or maybe Thursday. Either way, it looks like with Ben Johnson taking the job with the Bears, with Aaron Glenn probably taking the Jets job from all reports, he's the leader, and you might get that offered to him tomorrow. That Saints job, there's a pathway here for Anthony Weaver to get the job. And again, a second interview is a clear sign that they are interested in Weaver. You know, they might have Glenn ahead of Weaver, but Glenn used to play for the Jets. He knows the Jets organization well and might want to go there. So we'll see if Weaver gets this head coaching job with the Saints. And now we have to start to sort of pivot, if you're a fan of the Dolphins, in that what if he gets this job? And if he does get that job, that would leave Mike McDaniel on his fourth defensive coordinator in 4 years. And, you know, the past few weeks, I've been talking about it a lot, as have many other outlets. The assumption was that former Jets head coach Robert Saleh would be, you know, on Mike McDaniel's short list to come to Miami and be the new defensive coordinator, which would be great because his head coach, Robert Saleh, not very good. As a coordinator, the numbers speak for themselves. He is fantastic. Excuse me real quick there. And that was the assumption. But two things have happened. Number one, Robert Saleh now has a second interview in Jacksonville for their head coaching job. And I don't think anyone expected Robert Saleh to get another head coaching opportunity, at least this year, because it was so bad his entire time with the Jets. But Jacksonville's got quirky ownership. They're not the most normal, most stable organization out there. So the fact that they've maybe zeroed in on Robert Saleh not shocking. That might be the one spot where Saleh actually has a chance to be the head coach. There's also been rumblings that the Cowboys might show some interest, although everyone expects the Cowboys to go after Kellen Moore. But still, Saleh, Jacksonville, obviously, if he gets a head coaching job, he will not take a defensive coordinator job. Got to be out of your mind. But even if he doesn't get the Jacksonville job, he's not coming to Miami because it sounds like the coordinator job in San Francisco is his. And Mike Silver, the longtime, very much respected NFL reporter who also lives in the Bay Area and is very much tied into all things 49ers, he put out a report or a tweet on Monday saying that Robert Saleh will be the San Francisco 49ers defensive coordinator if he doesn't get a head coaching job. So Mike McDaniel, because Mike McDaniel is also very close with Robert Saleh. Robert Saleh owns a home in South Florida. Many people just connecting the dots are like, well, if he's out of work and if Weaver goes, he is very tight with Mike McDaniel. He owns a home in South Florida. He would go to Miami. Not the case. It looks like San Francisco will be the spot if he doesn't get a head coaching job. And that makes sense there because Kyle Shanahan, first off, San Francisco as an organization top to bottom, way better than the Miami Dolphins. That's number one. Number two, he's had this job before there and had a lot of success there. They went to a Super Bowl, lost, but they still went there. And number three, who's on the hot seat? Mike McDaniel or Kyle Shanahan? It's not Kyle Shanahan. So Robert Saleh, he comes to Miami, and then in 8 months, Mike McDaniel's out on his ass and he's fired. Now he's back looking for work. Go to San Francisco. That will not be the case, as Kyle Shanahan is not getting fired anytime soon. So we got to cross Robert Saleh off the list here in Miami, which where does that leave the Miami Dolphins? If Weaver does get the Saints head coaching job, because right now that's what Mike McDaniel, Chris Grier, and the front office in Miami is sort of, talking about, thinking about, sort of trying to figure this out, because you got to have your plan B ready to go and ready to go quick, because as all these guys get hired, now we got someone with the Bears. We might have someone tomorrow with the Jets. Jacksonville might be, zoning in on their guy here soon. The Raiders are going to be soon after as well. There are going to be a lot of teams that are going to be in the market for a new defensive coordinator. Right now, you have the Lions as well. They're going to be in the market once Aaron Glenn gets a head coaching job. So where does Miami go? Now, the Saints recently fired head coach Dennis Allen, who is a defensive coordinator, just took the job with the Bears, and Ben Johnson, or he's expected to in the next 1 or 2 days. So you can take him off the list. And I think this is the problem Mike McDaniel and the Miami Dolphins are going to have in trying to find a quality defensive coordinator. You have a head coach and a GM on the hot seat, and they have a poor season. And what's a poor season? 8 wins again in 2025. That's a poor season. They're getting fired. If they only win 9, don't make the playoffs, that's a poor season. Win 9, you're a 6 or a 7 seed out in round 1, they're probably still getting fired. Meaning, whoever comes to Miami, it's not a stable situation. Not to mention, Mike McDaniel has already fired Josh Poyer and Vic Fangio as his defensive coordinator. So it's not like Miami's defensive coordinator position is really a stable job. This will be their 4th in 4 years. So I don't know if it's not an attractive job for like an outsider to come here. Meaning, if you're Miami, you might have to promote from within someone who's already on the staff. And looking at the staff, it's kind of slim pickings because nobody on the staff has any experience calling plays or being a coordinator. But you have Ryan Slowick, who is the pass game specialist and the defensive backs coach. He's never been a coordinator, but he's coached on 2 levels. So he's coached linebackers and he's coached secondary. He's got experience coaching those areas. Is he ready to become a coordinator? I don't know. Maybe. You have Austin Clark, who came to Miami under Brian Flores, and he started off as an outside linebacker coach and has transitioned into a much beloved defensive line coach, who's probably one of the better, I'm not saying the best, one of the better line coaches in the NFL. But Miami is his only NFL experience because prior to coming to the Dolphins, he coached at Illinois and USC. It's not like he's coached for a few NFL teams where he gained experience with multiple staff. So he's a little raw. You have outside linebackers coach Ryan Crow, who just came into Miami this year, and for the past 6 years was the linebackers coach with the Tennessee Titans. Again, no experience as a coordinator. You have Brian Duker, the pass game coordinator and the secondary coach. So Slowick's the pass game specialist, and Brian Duker is the pass game coordinator. Again, he just came to Miami this year. He was with the Lions. So it's slim pickings if they want to promote from within. Not to mention, if any of these guys are really, really good, Anthony Weaver, if he gets this job with the Saints, might be like, hey, come with me to New Orleans. I gotta, they're going to give me 2 years, 3 years, 4 years to sort of fix this. In Miami, again, you might be gone in like 8 months if you don't win. So Weaver might poach some of the quality guys from this staff. So I don't know where Mike McDaniel turns right now. And again, we sort of saw this with Adam Gase when he was constantly firing people. You hit that point, usually in the year 3 or year 4 mark, where it's tough to recruit people to come work for you because you're always pointing the finger at them, throwing them under the bus. Now, with Weaver, it's not the case. He's leaving for a promotion. I get that. But again, when it's a revolving door at one spot, and a couple times it's been your call, Josh Poyer, Vic Fangio, it makes it tough to fill that role. Because, here's the deal. The NFL world saw how Miami treated Vic Fangio. And many felt it was an unjust firing. And now we see Vic with the Philadelphia Eagles, who had the number 1 ranked defense in the NFL in 2024. And now they're 1 game away from going to the Super Bowl. So if you're, someone who has a little bit of a resume, who has, some options, why would I go to Miami? This guy let Vic Fangio walk out the door, and he kind of pushed him out the door. So it's like, it's going to be tough to fill. Now, obviously, best case is Weaver's not hired by the Saints and he stays in Miami. That'd be great. I'm not the biggest Anthony Weaver fan, but he obviously did a very good job this year in Miami. And I think, obviously, he'd be much better than anyone that we tried to replace him with, because there's, once again, not much out there. And I think not much is going to want to come to Miami. So Weaver, it'll be interesting. It seems like this is the week where teams are making their head coaching moves, unless there's still someone on a staff of a team who's active. I know the Saints also had some interest in Joe Brady, the Bills' offensive coordinator. So if they meet with this week, say Weaver and Aaron Glenn, but don't hire either, it might be a sign that they're waiting for Joe Brady or someone else. But I know that's the one name that's been tied to the Saints. Again, we saw the Bears make their move. Everyone expects the Jets to make their move either Tuesday or Wednesday prior to Glenn flying down to the Saints job to meet with them. So we will see. But, yeah, that's where Miami is at right now with Anthony Weaver. There's a good chance he's going to be gone. And if he's gone, I don't know if they're going to get a guy who's as good as him to come in and replace him, making 2025 even more difficult than we think it will be. Okay, before I get to the next topic, real quick, everyone, be sure to check out finheaven.com. Everyone go to finheaven.com, the largest Miami Dolphins message board on the internet. Also, a shout out to our friends at the I Am a Miami Dolphins fan Facebook page, run by the great and talented Carlos Hernandez. If you're on Facebook, please be sure you are part of the I Am a Miami Dolphins fan Facebook page. And wherever you listen to this podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, Podchaser, iHeartRadio, Audible, YouTube, subscribe. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss an episode. And if you're watching on YouTube, smash that like button right now. It's always a big help. And if you leave us a 5-star rating and positive comment on Apple Podcasts, I will read that on the air on an upcoming show. Got to be 5-star rating and positive, though. Last topic here I'm going to talk about today. It's going to be a little bit of a shorter show. This past weekend in the playoffs, we had 4, I thought, very good games. And with 8 teams that are all just outstanding teams, I thought. Every team that played this weekend was great. 4 moved on, 4 went home and ended their season. But watching these games closely, as I did, and some of this stuff is like stuff we kind of know, but some of it really drives the point home. What can the Miami Dolphins learn by watching the final 8 teams in the playoffs? What can they learn by seeing what works, what's not working, and stuff like that? Obviously, you need very good players. We know that. Obviously, you need a smart head coach. We know that. But when you dive into it, like, what's the philosophy? What's the logic? what's the roster construction of the 8 teams left and sort of how they built these teams and how it got them to the second round of the playoffs. And just a few things, a few observations I have. Number one, speed only takes you so far. All these teams have quote unquote speed. They got a few guys that are really fast. But if you build a team around speed, I don't think you can win in this league. Win big. Obviously, yes, you can win games against the bad teams, but I'm talking winning the playoffs with a chance to go to the Super Bowl. Having speed is great, but what we saw this weekend, more so than ever in the past, is you got to be physical and you have to win the line of scrimmage. Having undersized guards and an undersized center, which Miami does have. Aaron Brewer is good, but he is undersized. Who can run and pull and get out in front of the fast running backs Miami has is nice in September and October versus bad teams. You are not going to win in Kansas City, in Buffalo, or on the road in any Northeast city with that type of offense. That shit don't fly. I think what we saw this weekend was you have to be more physical than the other team, especially on the offensive line, but even as well on the defensive line. Being undersized and fast is nice to a point, but you really need, you need some muscle up there, and you have to be more physical. And the more physical teams are winning for the most part. That's number one. Speed is nice, but don't build the whole thing around speed because that won't work. Number two, you don't need a scrambling quarterback, but you need a quarterback who can make plays with his legs. The game has changed, and if your quarterback is a sitting duck in the pocket, you're screwed. If your quarterback must throw it in under 2.4 seconds because if not, he's just going to get hit or something, like you're screwed. The game is played too fast, and when lanes open up, quarterbacks must have the ability to take off and run. I'm not saying they got to run all the time. I'm not saying they got to be scrambling quarterback. I'm saying when the lanes open up and the opportunities there, they have to be able to run 8, 9, 10 yards and slide and get those yards. If you have a quarterback that can't or just refuses to, you're playing at a huge disadvantage. Pat Mahomes can make plays with his legs. Josh Allen can make plays with his legs. Jaden Daniels can make plays with his legs. Jalen Hurts can make plays with his legs. Those 4 teams won. By the way, CJ Stroud can make plays with his legs. Lamar Jackson can as well. Those 2 lost. 6 of the 8 quarterbacks who played this weekend have quarterbacks who are not scrambling quarterbacks, but can make plays with their legs. And the 4 teams left all have that type of quarterback. Jared Goff, Matthew Stafford, not those guys. Still very good quarterbacks, and they will win games and take you far. And if everything lines up right, sure, they can go further. We've seen Jared Goff go to the Super Bowl and win. Not win, but go there with the Rams. We saw Matthew Stafford win with the Rams. Yeah, if everything's perfect, you can win with those guys. But we know in this league, everything's not always perfect. Stuff breaks down. And when stuff breaks down, your quarterback better be able to move because those are hidden yards you need to pick up on offense. And it's no mistake that the 4 quarterbacks left can make plays with their legs. And yeah, I just think it's uber important that you have a quarterback like that. Otherwise, you're just playing with one hand tied behind your back, and it makes it tough. The other thing, which kind of ties into that a little bit, the tush push must be in your toolbox as an offensive play. All weekend, I saw, I don't want to say every team, because I'm sure there's one that maybe wasn't running it. The tush push is the easiest way to pick up a 3rd and 1 or a 4th and 1. And why every team is not using this blows my mind. Teams that don't run the tush push or whatever you want to call it must start ASAP. And if you don't want your quarterback, who you're paying a lot of money, or in Miami's case might be fragile, to run it, that's fine. Have a tight end run it. Have a running back run it. Have a tall wide receiver run it, which I know we don't have in Miami. But someone has to run that play. That play needs to be implemented in Mike McDaniel's offense today. And you better have someone earmarked on your roster who can run it. And, I know some fans say, put in the backup quarterback and run it. I didn't want to do fine, whatever. Someone's got to run it. Because when you're 3rd and 1 and when you're 4th and 1, it's literally the easiest way to pick up a yard. Because all these teams are doing it, and it just extends drives, and it keeps the football in your control, and it gives you a better chance to score. Literally, when it first started, it was a fluke. It was a niche. We had something with the Eagles, then maybe one or two other teams trying to run it. Now, if you're not running it, you're an idiot. I mean, the Bills are running it. The Ravens run they run it too, but they run it with a twist. Like every team runs a variation of it, if not just running it. And if you're not running it, you're just an idiot at this point. It's a copycat league. Copy something that works, and this works. So Mike McDaniel really better get this in his offense next year. I have my doubts, if you will, but he should. Last thing has to do with roster construction. I think the days of only paying the premium position guys and paying them big money is what I mean. Obviously, everyone's getting paid. I think it may be over. I think it might be dead. I understand the thought process and why it has been that way for years amongst many of the general managers. That quarterback, wide receiver, offensive tackle, edge rusher, and corner are the 5 most important positions on any team. So you are going to draft those areas so you get those key spots on rookie deals and cheap. And if someone's in round 1, you get the extra 5th-year option. And while you want to use up the bulk of your salary cap space on the most important positions. I get it. Those are the highest paid guys in the league at those 5 spots. And that's where you want to sort of, that's how you sort of navigate the cap. But I think what I saw this weekend, more so than even all year, I've kind of had this thought heading back to last summer and then watching this year's kind of play out. I've sort of felt more strongly about it, but watching this past weekend, I am all in on this. I saw this weekend 4 games, 8 teams. I saw a lot of teams this weekend with dog shit wide receivers either win or almost win big games. Wide receivers with far less speed and talent than Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle running wide open down the field making plays. You can get by with one great wide receiver that you pay and then just a supporting cast around him. You don't need 3 or 4 high-priced wide receivers. You can get by with just one guy that you pay and take the money that you would pay a second or a third high-priced wide receiver and invest it in other positions. Invest it in guard, nose tackle, safety, linebacker, other areas that are not the premium positions. And that's just one example, because what I saw this weekend is you cannot get by with a dog shit offensive line. You cannot get by with a dog shit defensive line. But you can get by with a dog shit wide receiver group. You can get by with a lackluster cornerback group in some areas. A lot of guys get injured. Some of these teams are down their second and third string guys. You can get by, but you can't get by with the other areas. I think it's time for Miami in particular, because Chris Grier has lived and died by the premium positions where he reaches on guys in rounds, 1, 2, and even in 3, who play either edge, corner, offensive tackle, wide receiver, or quarterback, when he's letting other players at non-premium positions who are very good just slide by. Noah Igbenogany in round 1 was a colossal mistake, and he let guys like Jonathan Taylor and others who play non-premium positions just slide by. That was a mistake, and that's just one example. I could go on and on forever. But I think what I'm seeing this weekend is you need a well-balanced roster, and that means you have to spread out the money. You need to pay a nose tackle. You have to pay guards, or at least 1. You have to pay a safety or 2. You have to pay a middle linebacker, who I know might not be on the field much, because if you spend a lot of time in nickel, you still got to have one who's got talent. You need to spread around the wealth and not only invest in 5 positions and ignore, in some cases, and literally ignore, like offensive guard, where you don't spend any money. Look at the Bills. They lost Stephon Diggs, and it didn't hurt them one friggin' bit. Addition by subtraction, because they took the money that they would have saved there. They really didn't invest in wide receiver. They took a guy. They took a kid in round 2, but they used the money elsewhere, and they have a well-balanced roster. When some people thought they were going to take a little bit of a step back this year and not be the same type of team, no, they just had a more well-balanced team. That's why I have no problem telling Tyreek Hill to go kick rocks if he doesn't want to be here. I know with the cap, and it's tough to move on from that deal. I get it, but if there's a will, there's a way. I have no problem if he's not here next year, because we do not need to invest so much money in one position when we have glaring needs all over the place on this roster. The NFL is always evolving, and you must always be learning and not get stuck in the mud with the old way of doing business, the old way of thinking. The league has changed. And if your eyes are open to it, and if you're paying attention to what other teams are doing and other teams are having success with, then you have to sort of follow the logic that's working. We are seeing, if you're strong on both lines of scrimmages, which is not like a new, I mean, for years, people say, got to be strong on line of scrimmage. But for the past, I don't know, handful of years, it's been speed, speed, speed. Spread them out. Beat them with speed. No, the league is you better be strong on your offensive line and the defensive line. And you better have a quarterback, again. Doesn't have to be a scrambler, but can make plays with his legs. Even up until recently, we had Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, pocket passers still win. Those guys still win, blah, blah, blah. Well, nowadays, no, you kind of need your quarterback to run a bit. Again, and you need a balanced roster. If you are stuck with a pocket passer who can't move in 2025, you're kind of screwed. If you build a team around speed only that is weak up front on both lines of scrimmages, you're screwed. If you don't invest in positions like safety or guard and just ignore them completely like Chris Grier has, you're screwed. Any GM or head coach who thinks they can win any other way than what I just laid out is either arrogant, beyond belief, and they're just wrong. The league has changed, and you have to adapt. And if Miami does not adapt, this is going to be a rough 2025 season next September. If they do adapt, they have a chance to, maybe right the ship here and turn things around. We'll see how they handle it. But just watch the games. Watch the games, and you see what these teams are, how they sort of operate, how they built their roster, and how they're having success. Outside of one wide receiver on Washington, you couldn't name any other ones. Who are the Bills wide receivers that are any good? I mean, these teams are winning. Yes, they have great quarterbacks. I get that. But they got guys running down the field wide open because they have everything else around them on offense. They're at a high caliber, high quality, and they're doing their jobs. And that lets those maybe, not big time, big name wide receivers just run free at times and make plays down the field. So it really is a total team effort at the end of the day, but you have to have a team. You can't be like, I'm just going to pay the quarterback, I'm just going to pay the wide receivers and the hell of a tight end, and I'll pay a left tackle, and maybe I'll pay a right tackle, but screw the center position, screw the guards. We'll find guys somewhere cheap. Don't worry about it. That doesn't work. You have to spend the money. You have to balance out the roster and take the wealth and spread it around. And for the teams that do, you might be playing in mid to late January and possibly even February. For the teams that don't, you're doing mock drafts on January 20th, hoping someone you like might fall to your team. And that's kind of what I saw from this weekend. All right, everyone, thank you for listening. As always, follow us on social media on all the platforms, including TikTok, at Dolphins Talk. Check out the website, DolphinsTalk.com. We got a ton of new articles up, the latest mock drafts from reputable people that you can, I know it's mock drafts and it's only January, but it's fun to always just sort of get the pulse of what the pundits are saying. Don't take them too seriously. It's just for fun. Check those out. And again, wherever you're listening to this podcast, subscribe. And also, if you want more content, if you want to hear more of me, more of Josh, more of Aaron the Brain, patreon.com/Dolphins Talk, $3 a month. We do shows on music, pro wrestling, college football, television shows, and of course, other bonus content shows about the Dolphins. We have a private message board. We give away prizes like autographed jerseys, bobblehead dolls, still in the boxman condition. We have a lot of fun. It's only $3 a month. If you're a fan of this website, if you're a fan of the Miami Dolphins, if you got $3 a month, sign up at patreon.com/Dolphins Talk. Everyone have a great week. We'll talk to you again soon. And as always, don't forget, we must put an end to highway profanity.